The laughter came sharp, smug, and loud, too loud for a place like this. It clashed with the gentle clinking of cutlery, undercut the rustling palms and candlelit calm of the resort's open-air restaurant. And yet, Letitia James didn't look up. At the far end of the patio, she wiped down a table with quiet precision, every movement practiced, deliberate. Once, her name carried the weight of an entire state. Now she carried plates. She had been Attorney General of New York, had stared down billionaires and corrupt politicians in marble halls. Tonight, she was adjusting napkins in the shadows of rich men's laughter. She didn't flinch. She didn't need to. Letitia had learned long ago that power never required noise. It required control. Her posture was upright, her jaw set, her silence sharpened not by submission, but by calculation. She had dealt with senators more dangerous than these tourists, and donors more entitled than any drunk man in a floral shirt. But tonight wasn't about politics. It was about something colder, something she'd seen before. The group entered like they owned the air. Sunburned skin, loose linen, gold watches, and unearned confidence. At the center of it, Chad Kensington. Mid-40s, cocky in the way only inherited money could produce, chest puffed under a shirt that had never known a button. He stopped mid-stride, surveyed the restaurant like he was checking Zillow listings. "Man," he announced, too loud, "this place is, what's the word, authentic." "Nah, basic, yeah, basic." The table behind him erupted. A woman in oversized sunglasses, Brittany, tilted her head back and cackled. "God, I just hope they speak English here. Last night's staff couldn't say knife if it stabbed them." Letitia folded her towel, tucked it under her arm, and approached with a calm so practiced it was invisible. "Good evening," she said, voice smooth as glass. "Welcome. May I take your order?" Chad smirked. "Oh, so he exaggerated with theatrical slowness. "We want a menu. Can you understand that?" The table exploded into giggles. Brittany hid behind her wine glass, elbowing Connor, the man in the backward baseball cap, who whispered something crude under his breath. Letitia didn't blink. "Of course, sir." She handed them the menus with the grace of someone who had once cross-examined Wall Street CEOs. Chad glanced at it, then tossed it onto the table. "This menu's a joke. What even is this food?" Brittany wrinkled her nose. "You got anything normal? Or is it all just like rice and fish heads?" Connor chimed in, delighted. "I'm not trying to end up with some street food stomach bug." Laughter again, a wall of arrogance. Letitia's grip on her pen tightened, but only slightly. "We offer several international options," she began. "Just get us burgers and fries." Chad cut her off, waving a dismissive hand. "Something safe, and make sure it's not, Filipino style." Brittany gasped dramatically, then giggled into her hand. The others joined in like it was the line of the night. Letitia's pen moved across her notepad. "Understood, sir. Your food will be ready shortly." She turned to walk away, but Chad called after her. "Hey, what's your name, sweetheart?" She paused. "Letitia." He leaned back, grinning like he'd just pulled off a clever insult. "Letitia. Man, that's local. No offense, but we figured you guys would have easier names. Something less." Supreme Court. The laughter came again. Sharp, cruel, empty. Letitia turned away without a word, but something had shifted, and as she stepped past a nearby table with a tray of drinks in hand, the mockery kept rising behind her. "Yo, hey," Chad laughed. "They all look the same, don't they?" Connor nodded. "Bet they're all named Letitia, too." Brittany stirred her cocktail lazily. I read somewhere they worship foreigners, like give 'em $5 and they'll follow you home. Connor snorted. Bet she'd carry your luggage for a tip and a Coke. Letitia placed the tray down. Her hand didn't shake, but her patience was wearing thin. Hey, Letitia, Chad called, dragging her name like a dare. How much you make? Couple bucks a day? Enough for a bus ride back to wherever. She walked, steady, controlled. Then Brittany's voice floated up, faux innocent. I bet she doesn't even understand us. Probably just smiles and nods like the rest. Chad laughed. Oh, she understands. Just too scared to say anything. Right, Letitia? Laughter again. Letitia stopped, just for a breath. A flicker. Then she opened the kitchen door and disappeared inside. Letitia James looked down at the coin in Chad Kensington's fingers. A single silver token, held out with the casual smugness of a plantation overseer tossing a crust of bread to someone he thought too stupid to notice the insult. She didn't blink, didn't move, because men like Chad never dealt in actual value. They trafficked in humiliation, hoping the weight of their laughter would drown out the sound of their irrelevance. Chad leaned in, his smirk curling like spoiled cream. Or, do you want to beg for it? He asked, dangling the coin just above the table like he was training a dog. And that was the cue. His table howled, a chorus of entitlement and frat boy fantasy. One might have mistaken them for a parody of 21st century tourism, but no, they were deadly serious. Letitia raised her eyes and met his. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Something in the air tensed, like a circuit closing. Then, for the first time that night, she smiled. Not a grin, not a wince, just a small, deliberate curve of the lips, practiced in courtrooms, press briefings, and yes, now even behind a tray. Chad's smirk hesitated, flickered, not enough to betray fear, just enough to confirm confusion. The table quieted. They weren't sure if she was in on the joke, or if, God forbid, they were. Letitia reached forward with clinical calm, pinched the coin between two fingers, flipped it into the air. The metal spun, an arc of irony catching the low light, then dropped neatly back into her palm. With slow, intentional grace, she placed it flat on the table. Chad arched an eyebrow. What? Too good for a tip now? Letitia clasped her hands behind her back, posture regal, voice steady as a closing argument. I appreciate the gesture, sir, she said, tone so polite it circled back to mockery, but I wouldn't want to take advantage of your generosity. From the side of the restaurant, Monique nearly lost it. A half-laugh, half-choke of disbelief escaped her before she caught herself. Chad blinked. His friends exchanged uncertain glances, suddenly unsure whether they'd just delivered the punchline or been made into it. Letitia was already turning, walking away, not stomping, not flustered, just moving like someone who had somewhere more important to be, even if that place was technically the kitchen. Monique caught up with her near the service station, eyes wide, voice hushed but electrified. Okay, I don't know what just happened, but whatever that was a sermon. Letitia exhaled, pressing her palms against the edge of the counter, steadying herself not from weakness, but from the quiet fury that always simmers beneath decorum. They don't matter, she said. Monique scoffed. Yeah, well, seems like they've made it their entire vacation package to prove they do. Letitia said nothing. Monique stared at her for a beat, then folded her arms. You know, Ms. James, I don't get it. You don't walk like the rest of us. You move like... She hesitated, searching. Like someone who used to be somebody else. Letitia turned slightly. One brow lifted. Like what? Monique shrugged. Like someone who didn't just carry trays before she carried weight. Letitia went still. Monique rubbed her neck awkwardly. Okay, that sounded weird. I just mean, are you ever going to tell me who you really are? Silence. Then, for the first time all night, Letitia's guard slipped. Barely. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn ID card. Monique squinted. Her eyes widened. Wait, are you serious? You were a professor? Letitia tucked the badge away like it was evidence at trial. I was. Monique nearly dropped the picture she was holding. What the hell happened? How do you go from that to this? Letitia exhaled, slower this time. Life happened. Monique ran a hand down her face, still processing. And you speak English. Like perfect English, don't you? Letitia didn't respond. Oh my God, Monique whispered, eyes bouncing between Letitia and the dining area. They think you don't understand them. Her grin grew devilish. Oh, this is going to be good. Letitia followed her gaze. Chad and his buddies were still laughing, still basking in the luxurious aroma of their own ignorance. Monique nudged her. So what now, Professor? Letitia's jaw set like stone. She had planned to let it go. She really had. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to remind the table that not every black woman in a uniform is there to play nice. Back in the dining area, the volume had only grown. Chad was tearing into his burger like it owed him money, grease glistening on his chin as he winced dramatically. Oh man, he whined, chewing with theatrical disgust. This beef tastes weird. What is this? Dog meat. More laughter. Brittany dabbed at her mouth like she was starring in a B-list soap opera. Honestly, I don't even know why we came here. This country's a joke. All they want is our money. Letitia approached silently, tray in hand, composure unchanged. Chad leaned back in his chair and stretched like a man relaxing into his own superiority. I mean, can you blame him? He said, nodding toward Letitia without even bothering to lower his voice. They probably make what? $5 a day? He turned his full attention to her now, grinning wide. Hey, Letitia, that right? You'd do anything for a tip, wouldn't you? Letitia finally met his eyes, and this time she didn't look away. She let the silence breathe, let it become so heavy, so unmistakably deliberate that even Chad shifted in his seat. Brittany broke first. Maybe she really doesn't understand us, she said, still smirking. Chad waved a hand lazily. Nah, she does. She's just polite. Right, Letitia? You're just a polite little waitress, aren't you? His fingers tapped the table rhythmically. I mean, what else could you be? He snorted. You people don't exactly have options. The table erupted again. Letitia's tray tilted slightly in her grip. Monique, watching from the kitchen entrance, muttered something that would have gotten her banned from church. Then, Chad leaned forward, eyes lit with the thrill of his own cruelty. You know what I don't get? He said. How you people are just okay with being nobodies. He shook his head, laughing like he'd just discovered gravity. What's the big dream here, huh? Work your way up to a fishing boat? Letitia's breath came slow and controlled. Chad wasn't done. Be honest, Letitia. Have you ever even left this island? Or did they just assign you this uniform at birth? He smirked. And that was it. The moment the table stopped laughing, Not because they realized what they'd done, but because, for the first time all night, she stopped pretending she hadn't heard them. "Wait," Chad Kensington jeered, his voice rising with the confidence of a man who'd never been interrupted in his life. "Do you even know how to speak proper English?" The words hung in the air like a wet flag at half-mast, pathetic, tattered, and undeserved. Silence followed, the kind that didn't just fill the room but pressed against it, heavy, loaded, like the breath before a verdict. Letitia James didn't answer, not immediately. She set down her tray with the precision of someone who had once wielded subpoenas like scalpels. The entire table froze. Even the laughter had the sense to shut up. Then she spoke. Her voice was a scalpel itself, crisp, commanding, flawless. "I know 27 dialects and 7 languages." Chad's jaw didn't drop. It retracted, like the words had reached a part of his brain that hadn't been exercised since high school civics class. The blonde's fork clattered onto her plate. Her expression collapsed in real time, like a Botox job melting under heat. "What?" Chad blinked, as if Letitia's fluency had personally assaulted him. Letitia clasped her hands behind her back, the very picture of judicial calm. "I said," she repeated, this time smoother, slower, more surgical. "I know 27 dialects and 7 languages." Dead. Silent. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with the kind of clinical curiosity usually reserved for specimens under glass. "You seem curious. Would you prefer I translate your comments into French, German, perhaps Mandarin?" Chad's face tightened. Brittany's complexion, which had spent $3,000 trying to be golden, now glowed an embarrassed shade of rosé. In the kitchen, Monique had both hands over her mouth, silently convulsing with laughter, like someone watching justice go viral. Letitia allowed the moment to stretch, just long enough for the weight of her words to settle on every plate in the room. Then, with that same lawyerly precision, she reached into her pocket and placed something face up on the table. A worn but unmistakable ID. Letitia James, Professor of Law and Public Policy. Chad's face turned the color of unshucked crab. Letitia smiled politely. "Does that answer your question?" The restaurant had gone still. The clinking of forks, the low ambient jazz, the idle clatter of service. Gone. Every eye turned toward her. Even the waitstaff froze, instinctively recognizing that history was being made between courses. Chad shoved his chair back with all the grace of a toddler denied dessert. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. Letitia blinked slowly. "What's ridiculous?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. His boys weren't laughing anymore. Even Connor, who had previously treated racial slurs like party favors, suddenly found his cocktail fascinating. Letitia reached down and picked up the same coin he'd tried to humiliate her with earlier. She flipped it casually, the silver catching the light like a badge of irony, and set it gently back on the table. "You can keep this," she said softly. "Seems like you need it more than I do." In the kitchen, Monique lost all pretense. She doubled over, laughing into a dish rag. The woman in the sunglasses stood abruptly, grabbing her purse like it might protect her from further exposure. "I think we should go." The others scrambled after her, all those Rolexes and Ray-Bans suddenly too heavy to wear. Chad lingered, glowering, speechless, gripping the edge of the table like it owed him a response. He stared at Letitia, eyes narrowing, and spat the only thing he had left. "Oh, what? Now everyone's against me," the woman hissed. "Just go, Chad." But Chad wasn't done pretending he had the last word. He turned, forced a laugh so hollow it echoed off the wine glasses. You think you're some kind of hero? Some genius server who just put me in my place? He scoffed, shaking his head. Newsflash, Letitia. You're still just a woman carrying plates. You're still beneath me. Letitia didn't blink, didn't speak. Then, with the calm of someone who's already won, she smiled. Funny, she said. I was just thinking the same thing about you. A sharp, strangled cackle came from the kitchen. Monique had officially stopped pretending to work. Chad's jaw locked. You want to say that again? She didn't need to. The air had thickened, charged. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Several pulled out their phones. The truth had become content. Finally, the resort manager stepped forward, a thin man in a tailored vest who looked like he desperately wanted to be somewhere without moral consequences. Sir, he said, voice stiff with PR panic. We have a policy against guests harassing our staff. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Chad turned, stunned. You're kicking me out? Over her? The manager's arms folded. Extremely. Brittany grabbed his sleeve again. Chad, please. But he wasn't letting go. His fingers twitched. His temples throbbed. He wanted to win. He wanted to see Letitia flinch. But she didn't. That was the worst part. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't crying. She was just there, dignified, unmoved, and that burned more than anything. Chad snatched his sunglasses off the table, his voice tight. You know what? This place sucks anyway. He stormed off, his entourage trailing behind him like the credits to a bad sitcom. The moment the doors shut behind them, the applause began. Hesitant at first, then building. A slow, rolling ovation, not of politeness, but of collective relief, like an infection had just been expelled from the body. Guests raised their glasses in Letitia's direction. One elderly couple smiled and nodded like they'd just witnessed a sermon. A businessman at the bar clapped her gently on the back. You handled that with class, he said, his grin wide. Damn good to see. A woman near the window lifted her glass high. To Letitia. The restaurant cheered. Monique rushed forward, giddy with adrenaline. Girl, that was insane. You verbally roasted that man in front of a live audience. We should have charged admission. Letitia chuckled, shaking her head. It was nothing. Monique stared at her. Nothing? That was a full-on masterclass. People will be retelling that moment until the Wi-Fi dies. Before Letitia could reply, a new presence entered the room. The owner of the resort, tall, composed, and unmistakably observant, stepped in from the far end of the restaurant. His tailored suit didn't move, but his gaze did. It landed on Letitia, arms folded, expression unreadable. She straightened instinctively. Sir. The resort owner stood there for a long moment, eyes narrowed not with suspicion but with calculation, like a man recognizing a face he couldn't quite place, but knew he'd seen at a Senate hearing. Letitia held his gaze, not with defiance, but with the kind of quiet readiness that comes only from decades of being underestimated and winning anyway. Then, to her surprise, the man smiled, not the forced corporate grin of damage control, but something warmer. Follow me, he said. Monique, still flushed from second-hand triumph, gasped so hard she almost dropped a pitcher. Oh my God, you're getting promoted, aren't you? Letitia blinked. Wait, what? Monique clutched her arm. Don't play with me. If they make you manager and I don't get a staff discount on mojitos... Monique, Letitia chuckled, shaking her head. Monique threw up her hands theatrically. Fine, but if I don't get upgraded to assistant manager, I'm organizing a union tonight. Letitia was still smiling, half in disbelief, half in exhaustion. She hadn't even processed what this was yet. A promotion? A real one? Not the patronizing, "we see you" nonsense. Corporations love to paste over structural rot, but a genuine opportunity to lead, again. She followed the owner through the restaurant, the sounds of soft applause and wine glasses behind her fading into a low hum. They stepped into the private lounge, a room clearly designed for CEOs and apologies. Leather chairs, heavy wood desk, zero nonsense. The owner turned, his eyes sharper now, studying her not as an employee, but as a potential partner. "I've been watching you," he said. Of course he had. That's what people like him do. Letitia stood tall, hands folded calmly behind her back. "You handle yourself differently from the others," he continued. "You move like someone who's used to being in charge, but you never make anyone feel small. That's rare." She didn't know how to respond. It had been so long since someone noticed without condescending. She had spent the last year making herself invisible, camouflaging Ivy League degrees behind aprons and dignity behind apricot-glazed salmon. The owner leaned on the edge of the desk. "Tell me something. Why are you here? A woman like you, your resume, your poise, you're not just another face behind a tray. Why this? Why now?" Letitia hesitated. It was the kind of question she'd once loathed in interviews, precisely because it was never asked of men who stumbled upward. She exhaled, slow and unguarded. "My family needed me," she said simply. "I had a career once, a whole different life. But life doesn't care if the camera's still rolling. It doesn't wait for a perfect ending. Sometimes it just happens. And when it does, you do what you have to do." The owner nodded, not in pity but with respect, the kind that doesn't need to be verbalized. He reached across the desk and picked up a leather folder, sliding it across with the same gravity one might use to hand over state secrets. "I've been looking for someone to take over as supervisor for the resort," he said. "I think you'd be perfect." Letitia froze. A supervisor. Not just a new title, but a resurrection. She'd come here thinking survival was the endgame. But this was a return. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "Say yes," he replied plainly. "You've earned it." Letitia looked down at the papers. A real salary, real authority, a role that would finally allow her to stop explaining her worth and start wielding it. Her hand trembled slightly as she touched the edge of the contract. She swallowed hard, nodded once. "Then my answer is yes." The owner grinned. "Good. I expect great things from you, Letitia." She stepped out of the office lighter, not because the job changed her, but because, for the first time in far too long, someone saw who she already was. Monique was waiting just outside, bouncing on her heels like someone about to win a reality show. So, tell me you got it." Letitia smiled wide, unable to help it. "I got the job." Monique let out a scream that might have been heard in 3 zip codes. "Girl, you're my boss now. This means I can never get fired, right? Because technically, we go way back." Letitia laughed. "I'll consider it. If you stop serving iced tea like it's poison." Monique clutched her chest. Wow, absolute power corrupts absolutely. They returned to the bar, the restaurant now humming with calm. The sunset had burned itself into the ocean, the sky stained in orange and gold. Letitia stood there, taking it in. The soft chatter, the breeze, the sound of respect restored. Supervisor. The word didn't feel distant anymore. It fit her like a memory she'd been waiting to reclaim. Monique leaned on the counter. "Okay, Serious question. Do I get a raise now that you've ascended to management royalty? Letitia smirked. You get to keep your job. That's already a miracle. Monique gasped, mock offended. Ma'am, power has gone to your head and we're only 12 minutes into your reign. Before Letitia could respond, a sharply dressed man approached the bar. Tailored blazer, polished shoes, and the self-assured smile of someone who'd made more money than he'd ever admit to the IRS. Excuse me, he said, setting down his drink. Are you Letitia James? She straightened instinctively. Yes, sir. He extended a hand. Richard Clark. I run a global business consultancy. I was sitting in the back when everything went down. Letitia shook his hand, measuring the moment. I hope it wasn't too disruptive to your evening. Clark let out a low, appreciative laugh. Disruptive? Miss James, that was the most eloquent evisceration I've witnessed outside of Parliament. You didn't just put that man in his place. You did it without raising your voice, without taking the bait. That's not just service. That's leadership. Letitia waited. She knew there was more. With men like Clark, there always was. He leaned in slightly. And leadership, real leadership, especially under fire, is exactly what I look for. You controlled the entire room just by standing your ground, Monique whispered, like she was watching the second coming of Harriet Tubman, only with a serving tray. Told you, boss. Legendary. Letitia James chuckled, barely. A soft, almost imperceptible sound, the laugh of a woman who had once cross-examined state legislators, but now had to explain why she wouldn't accept a 5-peso tip from a racist tourist. I was just doing my job, she said. Maybe. The man beside her replied, his voice smoother than the bourbon in his glass. Richard Clark. Tan, tailored, and the kind of corporate liberal who donates to voting rights groups while outsourcing his labor to countries that don't have any. But I know leadership when it's in front of me. He reached into his blazer with the confidence of a man who only carries platinum cards and moral loopholes, then slid a business card across the counter like it was an invitation to heaven. Letitia hesitated before picking it up. She was old enough to know that opportunities from men like him rarely came without strings, usually silk, usually imported, usually noose-shaped. Richard smiled, clearly proud of the fact that he hadn't started his pitch with, I don't see color. I have an opening at my firm, strategic lead for civic initiatives, Southeast Asia Division. It's based in Manila, 6-figure salary, full team under you. Monique, eavesdropping with zero subtlety, choked on her own excitement. 6 figures, she wheezed, clutching her heart like the IRS had just forgiven her student loans. Letitia's fingers pressed against the edge of the card. 6 figures. A new country, a new title, a new chance to build again, only this time without having to clean up the broken glass of other people's entitlement. Richard took a slow sip of his drink, watching her like a man who believed he could spot brilliance better than the woman who embodied it. No rush, he said. But I'd be a fool to leave someone like you in a restaurant when you should be running entire cities. Letitia exhaled. She had just reclaimed her footing, stepped back into management, dignity, her name. And now there was another path, glittering, global, and paved with the currency of recognition. Richard tapped the counter twice. Think about it, he said, rising. When you're ready, give me a call. He walked away with the cool detachment of someone who makes offers like that weekly and rarely hears no. Monique, of course, was vibrating with disbelief. She spun Letitia by the shoulders. Do you even understand what just HAPPENED? Letitia stared at the card in her hand, the embossed lettering catching the dim light. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't surviving. She was about to start deciding. The ocean breeze filtered through the restaurant, as if the air itself had been waiting to breathe again. Conversations tapered off, the clink of cutlery slowing. The weight that had hung in the room earlier, manufactured by privilege, polished by mockery, was gone. Letitia stood near the entrance, card still in hand. Manila, 6 figures, a new life, a bigger stage, a reminder that the world hadn't shut its doors on her, only paused to see if she'd knock it down again. Monique waved a hand dramatically. "Hello? Earth to future CEO/Secretary of State. Are you even hearing me right now?" Letitia blinked, smiling faintly. "I hear you, Monique." "Good, 'cause I'm saying this loud and clear. You freaking made it." Letitia slipped the card into her pocket. "I don't know if I've made it yet." Monique scoffed. "Letitia, you just got promoted, humiliated a grade A bigot in front of a live audience, and got recruited for a 6-figure international leadership position. If that's not making it, girl, I need to rewrite the definition." Letitia laughed, real this time. Maybe Monique was right. As they stood there, the resort manager approached, his shirt slightly wrinkled, his forehead still shiny with stress, but his posture looser now, relieved. "Letitia," he said. "Sir," she replied, standing up straighter, though she didn't need to. "I just wanted to say, you handled yourself with real professionalism tonight. Guests are talking. The staff feels proud. What you did, it mattered." Letitia nodded with the grace of someone who knew how to accept praise without performing gratitude. The manager glanced sideways, lowered his voice. "And between you and me, Chad and his friends, permanently banned. Owner made sure of it." Monique fist-pumped like she'd just won a lawsuit. "Justice," Letitia chuckled. "That's good to hear." The manager clapped her gently on the shoulder. "Now go home. Get some rest. Something tells me big things are ahead for you." Letitia watched him walk away, then turned to the ocean. The waves moved like they always had, untouched by applause, indifferent to insult. But something felt different now. Not the sea. Her. Monique stretched. "So, boss, what's the plan?" Letitia stared out at the horizon for a long moment, then smiled. "I'm going to sleep." Monique blinked. "That's it?" "And tomorrow," Letitia said, "I'll decide what comes next." Monique nodded, then paused. "Wait, if you take the 6-figure job, does that mean I get promoted too?" Letitia burst into laughter. "Go home, Monique." Monique groaned, trailing behind her. "Fine. But don't forget I was your #1 fan. When you're rich, I expect air-conditioned justice and bottomless brunch." Letitia just smiled. She walked home that night past shuttered cafes and humming street lamps, past souvenir stands and sleepy sidewalks. And as the world quieted around her, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not noise, not applause, but clarity, dignity, direction. And above all, the unshakable knowledge that respect isn't something you demand, it's something you prove.